Welcome, everybody, to Day Democracy, a podcast about local government in British Columbia, what it does, what it struggles with, and the people trying to make it work. I'm Brian Frenkel.
I'm Arjun Singh.
Local government's always about where you want to get your potholes filled and where the water comes out of the tap and fires get fought and neighborhoods get built. But the expectations are high with local government and the authorities limited, resources are tight. Today we want to talk about what it takes to run for local government, whether it's a regional district electoral area rep, or it's a counselor or a mayor or a school district person. And so today we'd just like to briefly talk about that. We'll sum up later at the end of the podcast, and then we'll move on to telling you who we've got lined up for guests. And so with that, I'm going to hand over to Arjun and start the conversation about some of the aspects that are needed when you're running for local government.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. That's so awesome. Welcome, everybody. It's just so awesome to be back here with Brian again on our second episode of the podcast. Um, I've been I've been asked every day here in Kamloops if I would run for council again, and likely not. Probably 90% not. I also I want to stay married, and I also. But obviously very keenly interested in local government topics, issues, affairs. I spent it's funny, one of our one of our friends, and my former colleague, your colleague now is still in local government, Councillor Sav Dhaliwal in Burnaby. When he was president of UBCM, I asked him if he would appoint me to the local government leadership academy board. So I did that journey for training local government folks for about 9 years. Helping
Mm.
organize these seminars every year in Richmond, and then every election year, 4 or 5 across the province for elected officials who are new and returning, and given a lot of thought about what it takes to actually if you're going to create the ideal, so-called the perfect, no such thing, local government official, what would that look like? What kind of qualities would we all want to have? Like, who would
Yeah.
that, who would that be, right? So, and there's a couple of things I've noticed over the years. One is that, you know, when you're running for election, um, it's so much a team job that if you're just kind of going around and criticizing everything, everybody, everything under the sun, and everything is bad, I'm just going to go in there and fix it, and I'm just going to be like the hero and not you're not going to. First of all, it's not very it's not real because there's lots of good things that lots of councils and boards have done that we should also appreciate. Um, and also, if for some luck you get elected, you're going to be very, frustrated because no one wants to work with somebody who's always negative, right?
Mhm.
Uh, and doesn't want to work as sort of part of the team. So normally, what happens in local governments is that there's a selection of people who are incumbents, people who have been there before who are reelected. I would rather say most local governments have most of those are re-elections, and then there's a few that get elected, that are new on the councils or boards. That varies, but that's generally, I think, the rule of thumb. So you're working with folks who are who've been there, who have things they're proud of, and so
Mhm.
build everybody up is always a good idea.
Yeah.
Um, I think the another key thing is and it's sort of the same idea in a sense, but when you're running for a position, a lot of that in the beginning is listening as opposed to speaking. So you're really trying to learn more about the community because however long you've been in a community, once you're out there actually, kind of wanting to represent people, you'll learn a lot of things that you wouldn't know beforehand. So, when I was elected first in Kamloops, it was 20 years ago, but it was I thought I was born and raised in town. I was kind of had a lot of knowledge, but my goodness, the amount of things I learned, once I got on council
Yeah.
in terms of the community. Anyone when I was running for council was a pretty key thing. Let me pause here for a second, Brian, and just ask you, how do those resonate with you? Would you add anything?
Yeah, I think when people want to run, there has to be the passion. We've talked about this before, but there has to be some passion. And I think people that do put their hand up have the passion for the community. You got to be that team player, like you had said, trying to do things as a team. As you get on as a single entity, or maybe elected officials on a council, you can do some things, but you got to remember it's a team of seven or nine or five or whatever the number is in your community. And so you've got to get the votes to make sure that you can make change that you want to do and see. So that is important, that you got to be a team player, and you've got to be able to listen to other people's opinions, attitudes, thoughts on items across the board. And so I think that that's pretty key. I think you've got to help build trust amongst the council of the day. Not only yourself, that people can trust you, but you've got to make sure that your council is trusted in your community. We got to remember, Arjun, I think that every cycle, every election cycle, there's a 45 to 48% turnover of local government officials in British Columbia.
Hmm.
Not that that's a burnout issue. It could be a retirement issue. It could be they lost the election, but there is a bit of a turnover. I feel sometimes that the newly elected, and this is who we're trying to target and target the people that have been in government for a while, is to make sure that you are aware of what to expect. Because I don't think when you put your hand up to say I'm running, there's not a lot of materials out there that help you prepare. There are
Yeah.
some books from, Mr. McIntosh and others and Cuff and all of those things, but you got to really prepare yourself. And Arjun, I would ask what you see down in your neck of the woods about people preparing. How would you see people preparing to get ready to run for a local government position?
Well, I mean, as you know, Brian, as probably most people in the province know, Kamloops had a pretty tough time on the council the last 3 years, 3 plus years now. I ran for mayor, full disclosure, and the current mayor won fair and square. So we all wanted him to be as successful as he could be. Reed Hamer Jackson. Reed, I think, uh, came into the job, and I'll say this quite frankly, he did not want to really work with anybody else. He was the very untrustworthy. He was untrusting of the system that was already in City Hall.
Yeah.
So he tried to bring a lot of people outside City Hall, in a City Hall who weren't elected, who weren't, hired by the city. That didn't work. Um, and so, I think if he had actually sat down and talked to folks and really picked their brain about what it's like to be when you're elected, and so you had to talk to the mayor, the mayor that was before him. I talked to
Hmm.
council, talked to
Hmm.
staff. When I first ran, again, I was very fortunate. I talked to, I asked for appointments and got them with almost all senior city staff and council members, and I was just trying to pick their brains as to, what they were working on, what their passions were, what their interests were, tips about
Yeah.
running. Doing your homework that way is really, really important. The one thing I think that's really hard to for someone who's not been elected before to actually really understand, and this is where your work on mental health, Brian, is so key, is that that resilience, because there are people who are much more nasty, people who take a run at you, and you just want to do good in the community, and someone's coming at you and calling you all these names, for example, or disparaging your character, even as a candidate. So I think that resilience is important, and
Hmm.
understanding that you know if you need to model good behavior, and you also need to be kind of tough to bad behavior coming towards you. And
Yeah.
I'm going to credit our friend Josie Osborne, who's former mayor of Tofino and now Minister of Health in the province, for this term, not thick skin, not thin skin, but permeable skin. like knowing when to let the good stuff in and keeping the bad stuff out is a real key thing. And so, however you do that, whether it's through, exercise or a personal spirituality or some ethical code you live by, these are very important things more and more to consider as you're entering in this world. So many people I've asked to run won't do it because they say I'm really worried about the toxicity.
Yeah, the toxicity is there. Again, we've talked about that the last time a little bit now, but the reward of helping your community can
Yes.
be phenomenal, right? And doing things, whether it's new housing developments, whether it's a swimming pool, whether it's that direction as a team moving forward that brings something to your town and helps your town is pretty rewarding. So
Well,
I
it
would
totally is. And
suggest, yeah,
I'm gonna get my prop here. I'm getting a
okay,
prop. One sec. I'm getting a prop.
okay,
Uh, so this is the Kamloops Chronicle, which I helped produce, and I'm gonna try and find this and show it to the camera here. Give me a sec. Oh,
okay,
so this is my. Oh, can't see it.
yeah,
This is my latest.
awesome.
Um, and so
Yeah,
I did think about kind of what that was sort of what the joys were for me personally, right?
yeah.
Exactly as you're saying, like without going into great detail, just people will call you because they somehow are comfortable with you for whatever reason. Maybe they're your parents' friend, or they were in school with you, or what have you, and they'll say, "Look, I'm really having trouble navigating this. Can you help me?"
Hmm.
And when you can't help everybody for sure, but there's lots of people you can help, and it's such a satisfying thing to actually be able to help people navigate whatever they're kind of going through, right?
Yeah.
Um,
You
as
know,
you said, the idea of actually being part of big decisions in your community and helping steer those things through in a way which is in a community building kind of sort of
mhm.
mindset is such a satisfying thing. Um, Learning how to collaborate, learning how to work with diverse groups, and then I love to learn, and so like for me, like being on city council was like I know so much about my community because I was on city council for 14 years and the regional board for like 7 or 8 years. I know about my region, and that to me is like just such interesting stuff, all the way from like garbage issues to like policing issues to everything in between. It's an amazing learning experience.
When you have a team atmosphere and you get to listen to a business person, you get to listen to a school district principal or a realtor or a person in forestry or whatever it is, they bring different perspectives to that table. So that's why going in looking for a team atmosphere is pretty key than going in with both guns blazing and I'm going to save the world. You can't be a solo player in local government because one, it'll burn you out. Two, you just won't get anything accomplished. So really respect the other opinions around the table. That doesn't mean you're going to win every argument at a table every time you walk into or a discussion when you walk into a council meeting. So, I think when people are prepping, it's a lot easier now to go back. You don't have to really attend council meetings the day that there's a council meeting because most, if not all, council meetings or regional district meetings are recorded now.
Totally.
You can go back
Great
and say,
point.
okay, I can prep. I can, I'm going to binge watch the 17 episodes of the Caribou Regional District, right? I'm going to binge watch all of them and I'm going to try to get myself up to speed on how the chair works, how the electoral area reps work and understand some of the things that are in front of you. And I would encourage anybody and everybody to do that. Our mayor when he ran, Mayor Moutre, he was a year of council meetings coming to prep to get on to council, and then a couple terms, and then he ran for mayor.
Wow.
So he was
I've never
really,
quite heard the term binge watch being used, but
yeah,
I think it's a really, it's funny because one of the things we'll say in Kamloops is you went to a city council meeting, like how boring are you? But they're
yeah,
actually really, I find most of that stuff really
yeah.
fascinating.
When we go back to the term that we're, 40 to 50, 45% of us turn over every term, we really got to help the people that come in new. This year, I anticipate that it'll be 50% or plus
Mm.
turnover. I think that there has been some, we've lacked civility in some things. And if you're aged along, people are going, I've put in my time, or others are, that's not negative. I'm just saying that I think we're going to see a little bit of that.
Hmm.
And we've got to be there as a group to support who is coming in. And so, I hope a lot of what we have going through for the next 8 episodes is talking about the rewards. And yes, we deal with everything from healthcare to roads and snow removal, but we deal with a lot of the economic drivers of the region or your community. We deal with
Totally.
social issues that, once accomplished, give you a sense of pride in what you're doing. So I really hope that we can encourage more people to run, because we do not need more keyboard warriors out there. And some people say I do a better job sitting back and watching and critiquing. And that's a false narrative. You do not. We cannot be a local government that has left and right, right and wrong, black and white. We're headed that way in a lot of our politics, and local government cannot go down that road and
I agree
be
100%.
left and right, black or white, right or wrong. We got to meet in the middle, because that's what our community expects of us. But it's tough to see provincial, politics and federal politics, and down in the States, the same thing happens down there. We have to work at a team. And we saw some stuff this week that probably didn't roll out the way it should have, in your opinion and my opinion, where a mayor is accusing counselors of doing things that were nefarious. And so I don't know if that's really where we need to be in publics, but in politics, we need to be better than that.
I,
And
I, I
and
agree.
so when we see that, it's really difficult, because one comment like that and it gets on global news or city TV or whatever CTV, whatever the newscast is, that comes to your community and my community immediately. And they go, well, that's the way all mayors are. That's the
Yeah.
way that they treat each other. And it's false. And when they do that, it's it's automatically comes down to you. Well, you're like that too. You make tons of money. You yell at people, you whatever it is, right? And it's not fair that when one bad apple spoils and you get the situation like we've had this week, that it's not fair to the rest of us. And there's 1300 of us in the province, but that reflects poorly on all of us, and we got to be better than that.
Well, totally. And before I'm going to dive into the Ken Sim thing in a second here, but I want to say two things. One is that stand corrected. I think, you're right. It's probably 40, 50% turnover across the province. I was talking mainly from a Kamloops experience where it's usually a few every
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
But I
yeah, yeah.
think you're very, very right to in those stats. Number two, I was there's a very famous American podcaster named Scott Galloway, and he's a professor of business, but he sort of opines in politics, and he was saying that one of the things that he worries about Donald Trump is that Donald Trump's almost like inhumanity in a lot of ways creates a context for other folks to believe that's leadership. Right? So those people are coming up now and they're watching how Trump operates, and this is my view very strongly that he's not a good example of leadership in terms of being somebody who's collaborative and somebody who's empathetic. It's just totally the opposite, right? And it is seeping into so many different things. So, what we're talking about is that it came out in the city of Vancouver that Councillor Lenny Zhao went on Chinese television and it talked about the fact that the council colleagues didn't name who they were not in the ABC party, the main party of
Hmm.
the ruling party in Vancouver, were handing out drugs on Christmas Day to people, and they shouldn't have done that. Turns out not true.
Yeah,
Turns out, and then he apologized. Okay, he apologized, and then it actually turned out that the mayor said the same thing in a interview with Chinese media. And what I was kind of interested about that was that yes, he apologized, but when the media was asking him a couple of days ago, he just stuck to the same script for
Answer.
like
Yeah,
8 or 9 answers, right? Like I think that um what that kind of says to me is that this is just a script. This is
yeah,
if you really feel it in your heart and people were asking you questions about why you thought that, whatever, then you go a bit deeper because I don't think those responses actually had the intended effect of actually sincerity. I'm not saying the mayor wasn't sincere, but
yeah,
it came across like he was just had a script. And so, from my perspective, like in for a penny, in for a pound, if you're going to apologize, right? I mean,
yeah,
the media training sometimes you get is like, okay, you got to apologize and then leave it alone because you don't want the story to go on forever. But I do think people, and this is about the whole thing we're talking about building trust. People don't trust you if you don't bare your soul a bit more.
yeah,
Um, and so I think it's challenging, but I think it's very important. And obviously, there's risks involved, but there's also risks. I think big risk in not doing. These are big jobs, and you have to take that on the chin, and you have to think about how to become better and better at having people's trust with your answers.
yeah. I agree. It goes back to the adage of, maybe when you're running, you got to figure out and develop thick skin. Uh, we're human. I don't want to ever say that all of us that are 1,200 or 13 of us across the province have thick skin. We're human. We're sensitive to issues. We make mistakes, but you can't chastise us to the nth degree for making that mistake. And
Hmm.
and whether it's myself, in a meeting and I get too heated, we're only human.
Hmm.
And there are other factors that are out there that get you to that point. So it's just sad that we get, a snippet and then that's changed everyone's thought process on the individual, the moment, the conversation, and it's not fair. And
Yeah,
so I think that when we get going on this, I really believe that again, it gets back to supporting people that want to run and supporting the people that are going to run again, and making sure that we're there to make sure civility and is back in, because it is a rewarding job when things do click. But if you've got to fight it all the time and you're not part of a team, or the team doesn't you know you know become itself, it could be a struggle, right? So I would always encourage everybody, and not that I'm trying to finish this up, but I would encourage everybody, do your homework.
yeah, totally.
Homework, binge watch
Yeah,
your local government. You already know that you're running because you've got the passion. You're probably a team player as well, and then help build trust on that
maybe
board.
we should. Maybe I should. Our paper in Cameron should sponsor binge watching city council meeting days on a weekend. Like have popcorn and have like little discussions in the side table. That'd be kind of fun. Anyways, you want to talk about the guests we're having coming up in the
Yep.
episodes, and you wanted to kind of because it's very exciting. So let's talk about that.
We have had no issues getting guests to sign up. So Arjun and I have 8 more podcasts coming that we've mapped out well into May and into the first week of June. Every 2 weeks, we will tape, uh, edit, I guess. I'm learning how to do this, so it's awesome. And then we'll upload new episodes. And we've invited Mayor Gladys Attrell from Smithers as a guest, Mayor Merlin Blackwell from Clearwater as a guest, Councillor Pete Fry as a guest, former MLA, mayor of Dawson Creek, and school district rep Mike Bernier as a guest. And we're still waiting for 4 or 5 others that have said yes, but we want to confirm. So we're really excited that we're going to have some great conversations starting on number 3 and moving forward about what it is for local government and the struggles that mayors and regional district and MLAs have seen uh, with local government and how we can do better. So I would
Yeah.
encourage everybody to keep watching.
Yeah, feel free to reach out to us, folks. Comment on the video. Um, Brian, are you able to put our email somewhere or our contact
Yeah,
information? So
yeah, the email will be at the end of the podcast,
yeah,
and reach out and ask questions. And then one day we'll figure out how to do this live, and so that we can answer questions. And once we
UBCM
get,
2026 will have a booth.
yeah, there we go. We'll have a booth. Okay, thanks, Arjun, and until next time,
Thank you,
everybody.
brother. Thanks, Brian. All the best, everybody.